Hello and welcome back for the next chapter of the competitive biography of Emanuel Lasker. We're going back in time about a month to October 1889 in order to take a look at this game Lasker played against one of Germany's other up-and-coming masters, Jacques Mieses. Now I have two reasons for wanting to go over this game. The first is that Mieses is going to be our next antagonist over the next couple of videos, and so this gives me a very good chance to introduce him. As well, this game is actually just really cool in its own right, and I think it needs to be shared. So who is Jacques Mieses and how did he get his master title? The answer to the second question is honestly, I don't know, but we're going to go over what I do know about him. He first tried for the master title in 1885, where he was unfortunately able to exit his first group. Then in 1887 he came back and he was successful, finishing second in his first group. However, in the final group he ultimately lost a very crucial game to the eventual winner, Johann Bauer. Mieses's breakthrough seemed to come at the 1888 Bavarian Chess Federation Congress, where he was allowed to compete in the master tournament due to quite a few of the other masters not being present. There were a handful of reasons for this, notably Kurt von Bardeleben chose to play at the British Chess Association Congress held in Bradford at the exact same time, so that certainly explains his absence. Because of the absences, Mieses was allowed to play, and he justified this inclusion by coming in shared second, finishing only half a point behind Siegbert Tarrasch. Not bad. Later in the year, he played at another master tournament in Leipzig, and this time he came in third, and it seemed that at this point everyone just accepted that Mieses was another member of the master crowd, and so he received an invite to the 1889 Breslau tournament, where he again came in third place. So whether or not he achieved his master title by the more orthodox means or not, it is quite clear that this man is a very talented chess player and more than strong enough to hold the title. So later in 1889, Mieses, who normally lived in the city of Leipzig, came down to Berlin, played Emanuel Lasker, and that's the game we're going to be taking a look at right now. Jacques Mieses, with the white pieces, opens with e4. Lasker continues responding with e5, knight to c3, bishop to c5, and now g3 from Mieses. Technically, the Mieses variation that we've covered previously only comes after knight to f6 is played, but in general, this man was something of a pioneer of these King's Indian attack-esque setups. Lasker played knight to c6 here, bishop to g2, and now d6 was played. This allows Mieses to immediately take us into territory unlike what we've seen before by playing the move knight to a4. Now, the best move that they considered here was bishop to b6. This was known theory at the time. Knight captures b6, a captures b6, and now the moves d3 and, like what we'll see in the game, knight to e2, f4 and such, would be played in the game between Karl Pitschel and Arnold Schottlander in 1879. White would win this game. Lasker deviates from this by playing the move bishop to e6, opting to give up the bishop pair on the c5 square instead. Mieses continues in the same fashion, d3, knight to f6, knight to e2, and now Lasker plays the move queen to d6. Queen to d7 had previously been tried here. The game continued with the moves b3 and now bishop to h3 as planned. The bishop came to f3, and after h6 and bishop to e3, g5 was played. This was also played in 1879 by Karl Pitschel, though the black pieces were played by another German master, Karl Wemmers, who would go on to win this game with black. But as mentioned, Lasker decided to go for queen to d6 instead, and of course, as telegraphed, f4 from Mieses. Now the chess.com database has a 2005 game continuing with long castles, which is the best move according to the engine. But Lasker here instead decided to play the move h5. This move is a novelty, and so it's as of move 9 that the players are playing a unique game. Mieses continues pushing his pawn forward to f5, forcing Lasker to retreat to d7, and now a move that he got somewhat criticized for, bishop to g5. Bishop to e3 was given as a slightly favorable alternative, with the justification that if knight to g4 attacking it, the bishop is actually perfectly fine on g1. H3 will come, the knight will get kicked, and then eventually the bishop will return to its ideal post on e3. Another option was to play something of a waiting move like knight to c3, which we'll see in the game, and only after black castles long would you play the move bishop to g5, because this at least comes with a pin on the knight. The issue with doing bishop to g5 now is that Lasker simply plays knight to h7, kicking the bishop back to e3 anyway, so you can consider this a loss of time. Lasker continued by long castling, knight to c3 was played, and now knight to f6. This is the exact position that the commentator I talked about mentioned when they said bishop to g5 is a good move now, but Mieses instead decided to play the move knight to b5, attacking the queen. The queen drops back to e7, and now c3 from Mieses. Now we're going to talk about what the point behind c3 is in a second, but what's more prudent is to talk about the tactics that arise after Lasker's response to this move, c4. Now your most direct option of d captures on c4 runs into bishop captures on f5, opening up an attack on white's queen and threatening to win the pawn on e4. Now white is able to keep material equality. After queen to a4, we trade on e4, bishop e4, knight e4, and then we trade on a7, knight a7, knight a7, queen a7. Material is equal, but I imagine that after c5, black is going to have the better game due to the better pawn structure and ideally safer king. It's hard to say for sure, but I would imagine the white king is going to be much less safe in this position. The analysts of the day believe that queen to a4 was the right move for white, although I admit I have absolutely no idea what they're planning after simply a6. I don't know where this knight is going, and I do believe that white is actually in quite a bit of trouble here. Anyway, Mieses decided to play the move b4. This was the justification behind c3, but now Lasker gets to play a very nice move in response to this. So for the first time in a little bit, what I want you to do, pause the video, see if you can find the move that Lasker played to counter b4. There are quite a few moves that are good here for black, I will admit, but there's one that I think really directly shows the fault behind b4. All right, 3, 2, 1. Knight captures on b4. Very straightforward. This is a sacrifice. If you take, of course, you're going to lose the knight here, but white does have access to the intermezzo knight captures on a7 with check. And after king to b8, c captures on b4. So this is indeed just a piece sacrifice, but Lasker gets very good compensation for it. Queen captures on b4 with check. Now Mieses here decided to escape the check with king to f1. As scary as it looks, you do actually need to block with queen to d2 here. Yes, black does get a passed pawn with c3, but after queen to c1, c2 isn't going to be a threat, so you don't really have to worry too much about that. Knight to g4, on the other hand, is a little bit of a big deal. However, you get access to the move rook to b1, and after queen to a5, you can castle here as white. The position is certainly not great, and I do believe that black is getting insane compensation for the piece, but you're certainly surviving here as white. After Mieses' move king to f1, things are a little bit more dodgy. Knight to g4 comes with an attack on the undefended bishop, so Mieses moves it back to g1, and now bishop to a4 pokes the queen. Rook to b1 creates a counterattack, which Lasker dodges through queen to a3. Queen to e2 from Mieses, and now rook captures on d3. So Lasker has gained two pawns for his piece, and he still has a whole bunch of attacking forces in Mieses' camp. One of those is attempted to be dislodged through h3, and now Lasker comes up with another beautiful move that I'm not going to ask you to pause the video for, but I will give you just a second to come up with on your own if you'd like. Rook h to d8. Knight to f6 is perfectly fine as well, by the way. Black is still in complete control, but Lasker's move is just so beautiful. H captures on g4 was played, and now just the very straightforward threat, c3. From here, it's very obvious. c2 is going to be played next, and black is controlling all of the squares that the pawn needs to promote to. Mieses, in this position, I should remind you, is up 2 pieces, but he certainly doesn't feel like it. So here he correctly sacrifices one of them back by playing the move knight to c6 with check, distracting this bishop from the c2 square. So after bishop captures on c6, bishop to e3 can be played, and after c2 from Lasker, the queen is actually able to take this. However, now Lasker gets to take the bishop here on e3, and so at the end of all this, Lasker is up a pawn. Now the kicker is that even though the rook is pinning the b pawn, the bishop is not up for grabs. If white were to play queen captures on c6 here, then rook to d1 with check comes. And now either white takes it and loses the queen, or you play king to f2, and white simply gets mated. Rook to e2 check, king captures e2, queen to d3 check, king to f2, queen to d4 check, king to f3, rook to d3 check, king to e2, rook to d2 check, king to f3, and now either one of these two pieces to f2 with checkmate. So with the capture of the bishop being a non-starter, Mieses tried to dodge all that by starting with the move king to f2, but Lasker simply responded with rook to c3. And it was here on move 28 that Jacques Mieses resigned the game. Now this is a very understandable decision. Mieses here is down a pawn, he has the worst pawn structure, and probably more importantly than that, he's just getting checkmated. After the queen moves, the threats here for black are of the form queen to c5 check, followed by rook to c2. This other rook is going to join the game, and I don't believe that white's king is going to survive more than a few moves regardless. So Mieses decided to fall on his sword now and call it quits. So I hope you enjoyed this nice little attacking game from Lasker. After that match with von Bartheleben, it's been a little bit since we've seen a very flashy win, so I was very happy to show off this game. Mieses in general had a reputation for being a very sharp and aggressive player, So over the course of the match that we're about to cover, we're going to be seeing quite a few more games of this caliber, or at least attempts of this game. So there's going to be quite a bit of attacking chess to look forward to. I look forward to seeing you there. So until then.